Hello there and welcome back to Electric. I'm coming to you from one of my favorite places in Pretoria, basement parking area. You wouldn't think that, but I get to charge here for free. There's two charging bays here from EV Charge. They're a supplier of electric car charging equipment and accessories, catering to the needs of the early adopters. And they've got two free 11 kilowatt AC chargers here. And on that note, I thought this might be the ideal place to talk about how long does it take to charge an electric car, because I get asked this question quite frequently, and the fact that these chargers are here and just around the corner in the same basement we have another type of charger makes this the ideal space to talk about this. And also the last remaining type of charger I've also got in the car here with me. So we can talk about all the types of chargers and charging speeds you might get. People who are curious about it are coming from petrol or diesel cars and are used to taking between 1 and 2 minutes to fill up their cars. Sometimes spending at most, I think, about 5 minutes at a petrol station just to top up, if you include the payment process and maybe putting the nozzle in or having a petrol attendant put it in for you. Yeah, that's what we do here in South Africa. And it's quick and fairly painless, and it's a process that has been perfected over decades. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense that people have these questions, burning questions, especially when they read stories online about people waiting for chargers and horror stories out of certain parts of the world. There haven't been that many cases of this. But yes, it's a very valid question for people who aren't used to electric cars. And I completely understand it, which is why I'm going to explain a little bit, or try and explain it. And we'll begin with something fairly simple. The first term that you need to understand when it comes to how fast your electric car can charge is kilowatt hour. Now, it's useful to think of this as sort of an electric liter. Strictly speaking, kilowatt hour is a measure of energy used over a certain period. For those of you not familiar with the metric system, there are 1,000 watts in a kilowatt. And a good electrical appliance to use as an example to explain this is a electric kettle, which is a 2,000 watt appliance typically, which means it uses 2 kilowatts of power. Now, it doesn't run over an hour, but if it had to run over an hour, it would consume 2 kilowatt hours of electricity. But in the context of electric cars, kilowatt hours is not just used to explain how much energy is consumed. It is also used to refer to the capacity of the electric car's battery. For example, our GWM Aura 03 GT has a 60 kilowatt hour battery, and that means that we would be able to use 60 kilowatts of power for an hour before the battery drains. Now, fortunately, there is unlikely to be any situation where I would need to use that much power consistently, and our car would run out of juice in just an hour. You get cars with smaller batteries and you get cars with bigger batteries. But if you want to know how fast your battery will charge, it's important to understand and know what the capacity of your car's battery is. Now, because our Aura has got a 60 kilowatt hour battery, it means that it would take 60 kilowatts of power for an hour to fill up the battery to full. And you'd only be able to achieve that on a fast DC charger. That brings us to our second topic of interest when it comes to knowing how fast your electric car will charge, and that is the different charging types you get, or as they refer to in some countries, the charging levels. To begin, there's the slowest type, which is slow alternating current charging. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of alternating current and direct current, or AC and DC, but suffice it to say that AC charging is slower and DC charging is faster, although there can be great variations in speeds within each of the different types of charging. Now, the first type of AC charging, slow AC charging, is done with a portable charger, typically. And these will have like a regular plug on one end that you can plug into a socket. In other countries, it will be it will have the type of plug that you need, that they will supply with your car, or I'm sure you can use an adapter if somehow you imported one. And then on the other end, you've got a CCS2 connector, which has become the standard for most of the world except the US. They've started adopting the North American charging standard developed by Tesla, which of course is a smaller plug and very convenient and light. This type of charger can charge anywhere from around 1.38 kilowatts in South Africa, or 1.4 kilowatts, to 3.7 kilowatts. So if you want to know how fast your car will charge with this charger, it's pretty simple math. You start with the capacity. So we've got a 60 kilowatt hour battery, and if I were able to charge at say 3 kilowatts, there's a setting on here that allows me to limit it to around that speed. That means it would take roughly 20 hours to fill from empty to full, with some variation, because the way that battery technology works is it tends to slow down after 80%, although with slow AC charging you won't necessarily see that. It's more with fast AC charging and fast DC charging that you see those significant slowdowns. But in general, with these types of chargers, it will take somewhere between 15 and 20 hours to fill up a electric car's battery, or electric car with 60 kilowatt hours of capacity. The bigger the battery, the longer it will take, but you also get the smaller battery, so it will be slightly faster. So yeah, that is number one, slow AC charging. You can plug it in anywhere. There is a socket, and there might be some limits in terms of amp ratings, where you might have a 10 amp socket, and hopefully you have a car that can limit the current, or you're going to trip that breaker, or you have 16 amps, which is common in South Africa as well. And with 16 amps, you'll be able to charge at 3.7 kilowatts, the maximum speed supported by portable chargers. Okay, then the second type of charger that you get is fast AC charging. Now, the fastest you'll get for single phase homes is 7.4 kilowatts. And that will be able to refill a 60 kilowatt hour battery in less than 10 hours if you use 60 divided by 7. And for that, you would need a plug that supports 32 amps in South Africa. And there's lots of companies that do these installations with dedicated chargers that can reach those speeds in single phase homes. As soon as you go up to 3-phase connections, you can get a charger with 11 kilowatt speeds, or typically 22 kilowatt speeds, which is what this cable supports. Now, the reason I have this cable is because many fast AC chargers out in the public, like in this parking space at shopping complexes, at gyms, or places where you would spend a little bit more time than where you would need a fast DC charger, which I'll get into now, they don't have dedicated cables. So you need this cable, and you plug this side into the charging port, and then this one goes into the car. CCS2 connector, same as the other charger. And with this type of charging, if you've got an 11 kilowatt AC fast charger, it's going to take you about 6 hours to refill this car's battery. And if you've got 22 kilowatts, it'll take about 3 hours to refill the battery. So yeah, that's fast AC charging for you. It's possible to get one of these chargers installed at home. If you've got a 3-phase connection, you can go up to 22 kilowatts, but it's also important to consider that some cars don't go up to that charging speed. Our Aura goes up to 11 kilowatts AC, and something like the Dolphin only goes up to 7 kilowatts AC. So it might not be worth it to invest in a faster charger, and many homes don't have 3-phase power in any case, so then 7 kilowatts is your best option. Now on to the last type of charging, for which we have a charger around the corner, which is DC fast charging. And these chargers are those that you use when you go on long distance trips, and they can have charging speeds anywhere from around 25 kilowatts to well over 200 kilowatts in South Africa. I believe we've got some chargers that could do 400 kilowatts. And when it comes to these chargers, it's also important to consider the DC charging limits of your car. For example, our Aura is limited at 64 kilowatts DC charging, which is probably a bit slow by today's standards. You get cars like the Taycan and the e-tron that can go over 200 kilowatts. But if we had a 60 kilowatt DC charger, we would be able to fill up our car's battery in an hour. So these chargers are very, very useful for long distance trips. Now, when it comes to DC charging speeds, it's also important to consider the battery technology and how charging works, the charging curve. I'm not going to dive too deeply into that, but in general, electric car's battery will only peak at the maximum charging speed of a DC charger somewhere between 20% and 80%, and it will slow down after 80%. So it's not always ideal to charge after 80%. And this is why, car manufacturers advertise their charging speeds from 20% to 80% and not necessarily from 20% to 100% or from 0% to 100%, because that portion of a charging is much faster. And it's also one of the reasons why it's not always a good idea to charge well beyond 80% at a DC charger, because you'll be waiting a bit longer. In general, we found our Aura can charge about 60% to 80% of its capacity in roughly 45 minutes to an hour on a DC charger that supports 60 kilowatt charging. So just to summarize, you get slow AC charging with speeds of around 1.4 kilowatts to 3.7 kilowatts, and it will take about 15 to 20 hours to charge an electric car with a typical capacity of around 60 kilowatt hours or 70 kilowatt hours on that speed. You get fast AC charging, which can be 7 kilowatts, 11 kilowatts, or 22 kilowatts most commonly, and it will take anywhere from 3 hours to 10 hours to charge on this type of charging, from 0 to 100%, of course. And then lastly, DC charging, for which the speeds can vary greatly depending on the charger you're using and the car you're using. And most of these chargers will have around 40 kilowatts, 50 kilowatts, 60 kilowatts or higher charging speeds. And these are ideal for when you're on the go. In general, you'd find somewhere between 40 minutes and an hour and a half, you'd be able to add between 60 and 80% battery. And that's why they're ideal for long distance road trips. And then just as a final thought, I know the hours would scare a lot of people, but just remember, when you're slow AC charging or fast AC charging, which is what you would typically be doing at home or when you're spending a long time somewhere, this type of charging only happens when you're doing a lot of other stuff, when your car would be sitting idle in any case. So slow AC charging at home, for example, you have to spend time at home. Many people spend around 12 hours, and you can just plug in the car then. And if you do this every day, then your charging time will be much shorter, of course, than the maximum of 100%. And in general, it's recommended to do those short charges, but that's a topic for a whole other day. If you like this video, please subscribe and like and share with your friends or anybody who's interested in EVs. And yeah, see you next time.